Okay, I'll ask some basic simple questions and which I want everyone to answer. Okay, when I say the word car, what comes to your mind? When I say, I have a car, what comes to your mind? Likewise, when I say cell phone, what comes to your mind? When I say cell phone, what comes to your mind? When I say I bought a new cell phone, again, you have model, memory, right? The operating system. It is Android or iOS, right? Battery, most different at all. Battery, right? So if you see, without even telling you more about these things, I was able to ask you a question and you were able to answer my question, right? That a car will have these features. A cell phone will have these features, right? So how did you say that? You were able to, every one of you were able to give the same answer because when I say car, you expect that every car will have this information, right? It doesn't matter whether it's a Toyota, whether it's a Honda, a Mercedes Benz, doesn't matter. All cars will have this information, right? Can I say that all cars follow a contract? Do you guys agree with me? Right? If the above is a contract, all car manufacturers follow the above contract. Do you guys agree with me? Right? It does not matter what car it is. Every car has to follow this particular contract. In the sense, a car should have a make, a car should have a model, mileage, right? Does not matter. Even if the recent hybrid cars, Tesla or whatever it is, right? They all use this basic contract. Similarly, this applies to cell phone. Instead of car, I'll say all cell phone manufacturers follow the above contract. So the important thing is a contract. There has to be a contract which everyone has to follow, right? You can model this, you can apply this thing on any physical entity that you see. Let it be a cell phone, let it be a car, let it be your wallet, let it be your backpack, let it be your laptop. When we use a word to represent entity, there are some common features, right? So you can treat that as a contract which everyone will implement, but everyone will have their own different implementation, right? Like for example, a Toyota will have a different engine. A Honda will have a different engine, but end of the day, a Toyota will have 4 cars, a Honda will have, Toyota will have 4 tires, a Honda will have four tires as well. Okay, so a car using which you are able to represent information is known as a class. Okay, class is a contract. Like here we have said contract, which all manufacturers should implement. So a class in Java, we are going to discuss about something of class and object. End of the day, remember, you're going to learn about object-oriented programming. Oops, right? So we need to understand, where is that go? We need to understand what an object is, what an object-oriented programming is. Okay, so for that, the basic fundamentals in Java is something called class and an object. So a class is like a contract, just like there is a set of information. Okay, so that you represent a contract in Java using something called class. Okay, now let's discuss what an object is. Object is someone who implements this contract. Like for example, I go and buy a Toyota car. When I say Toyota car, you know that it is a car. It is a car, but it implements some features. So whenever someone buys a new car, they are getting their own car. Okay, so that is called an object. An object is something that implements a contract. Okay. Likewise, you can apply that theory to anything that I just mentioned. Like for example, cell phone. So here cell phone is a contract. Now, can you give me an examples of a cell phone object? Okay. So the example was, let's say cell phone, right? So if I go buy a cell phone, that's an iPhone. So I'm getting my own copy of iPhone, which is a cell phone, right? An iPhone implements a cell phone contract. Similarly, if I go buy an S5, a Samsung S5, it's a cell phone, right? And you're getting these features and some additional features. But the important thing is you are getting your own implementation of the cell phone, right? For example, my cell phone will have its own different number. My cell phone will have its own different battery life. Based upon what I use, I'll get my own different battery life. My car will have my own different mileage. If two people buy the same car, let's say, Toyota car, same brand car, they will get different mileage, right? Because everyone is getting their own copy of the car. Everyone will have their own instance of the car. So that is known as an object. An object is something that you get your own local, copy, but it is something that implements a contract. Okay, is that clear? What a class and what an object in Java? Are the basic fundamentals. Please let me know if you have any questions on this. A contract and an object. Sorry, a class and an object. Very good, no questions. Now, can you give me example of a class? Okay, look around. You will see many objects, many things that you can represent in a program. Tell me example of a class. Don't give you the examples that I already spoke. Think about something new. Very good. It can be anything. It can be a lamp, it can be a fan, it can be a person, a refrigerator, anything. Anything that you can represent using a contract is known as class. And each new instance of that particular class is an object. Right? So object will have its own set of data. Okay? So in an object-oriented program, I'll just use the shortcut OOP or OOPS. Data is represented using objects. Okay? So in an object-oriented program, the data is represented using object. And class represents the contract. Okay, so this is the fundamental of OOPS. Okay, so OOPS, as I said, is all about the data. And you represent data using objects. And the class is the one is what the objects represent the contract. Okay, so the class represents the contract of an object. Okay, is that clear? What is a class and what is an object? fine. A class contains something called attributes and actions. Okay. So, like for example, what we have seen so far, these are called attributes of a class. That means these are some of the data that a class will represent. Like for example, a car, the data is make, model, mileage, color, etc. So these are attributes. Likewise, a cell phone, model, memory, operating system, battery, right? These are attributes. And then there's something called actions. So actions are something that you can perform on a particular object. Like for example, I can say, what actions can I do on a car? I can, switch on. What I'll do is I'll represent that here. Okay, I represent using attributes. These are attributes. These are actions. Okay, so I can switch on. I can turn left. I can turn right. Right. I can move forward. I can do move backward. Right? So these are actions that you can perform on a class or an object. Now, can you give me an example on cell phone? What are attributes? And give me some actions. So I can say send text. Okay. I can say call number. I can, turn off, turn on. So these are actions. These are some actions that I can perform on a cell phone. Okay. So class attributes and actions. Okay. And you use object to manipulate that data. Okay. So based upon how you drive, right? Based upon how I drive, my mileage gets calculated. Right? So based upon the actions, you can manipulate your attributes. Okay, so we'll see more in detail about attributes and actions. Okay, but these are the basic fundamentals of a class. A class represents a contract. An object is something that is a representation of the class. Okay, and a class contains attributes. So using attributes, you represent the data, and using actions, you perform some operations on that particular class. Okay. Now let's see how to represent a class in Java. So a class in Java is represented using by the word class. Everything is in lowercase. So the other day, if you have seen, we have written a hello world example. Go to my Java examples. So if I open my hello world.java, you'll see something called class, right? So class is in lowercase. So class is the basic fundamental of any Java program. Okay, so let's try to understand what a class is. So in Java, you represent class using the keyword class. So it's a class. Okay. Now let's try to represent something called student. So if I say I have a called student, can you tell me what are the attributes on that student? What will be the attributes on the student? Name for sure. Let's say student ID. Student will have ID. Let's say it's contact number. Right? These are the basics. Can you tell me what are the actions? What actions can I perform on a student? So I can say I can give like exercise to a student, right? I can evaluate. where it is exercise, right? I can, let's say mark as present. If you attended the class, I can say mark as absent if you did not attend the class. So these are some of the actions that I can perform on a class, right? And if you see, the moment I say student, you will know that student will have this information. So it's a contract. Okay? Now in this case, there are like 10 people who attended this class. I can say you're all students. You all have this information. And I can perform actions on each one of you. But each student is unique, right? For example, I have Azhar. Azhar will have his own set of information. I can perform actions specific on Azhar. Likewise, I have someone called Deepti. So Deepti is a different student. She has her own details here. So student class is a contract, and an object is a representation of that particular class. Okay, clear what a class is? Okay, so the attributes, right? Attributes is a object-oriented programming word, but the actual word in Java is something called fields. Attributes are known as fields in Java. Okay, they are known as fields, and fields are used to represent data of that particular class. Okay, for example, in this case, can you guys read this text? Be able to, is this text clear? In this case, I have a called employee, which has like 4 fields here: a name, a SSN, a email address, and a year of birth. Right? So this is how I would represent a employee. So any questions on class there? Does everyone understand what a class is? Okay. Now let's try to understand what is called object. Okay. Before that, a class should be saved in something called class name. Okay. So for example, if my class is class employee, the name of my file should be employee.java. Okay. Likewise, if my class is student, the name of my file should be student.java. Okay. So this is a best practice rule that you have to follow in Java. Okay. So there's a question here. These operations are for the instructor or for the student. Okay. So using these operations, I can change the information on the student. Okay. So we'll discuss more on these operations or actions in a while. Who can access this, how to access this and all. Okay. So, I'll answer that. You will get the answer as we progress through the course. Okay. Let's move on. Let's try to understand objects in more detail. Okay. So you create objects in Java. Okay, one second. There's another question. I would like to say that one must observe that class name starts with uppercase and other stuff. So Vamshi, you need to understand there are people who who are just learning programming, right? So there's a standard that you have to follow in Java. I'll share those standards. Okay. But yes, that's a good observation. Class name should always start with uppercase. So I'll share all those details as we go through the course. Okay. Thank you for sharing that information. Let's talk about objects in Java. So if I have to buy a car, I'll go and buy a new car, right? So I'll go to the showroom and say I want to buy a new car. So the important thing is new. In Java, if I want to create an object, I will use something called new. The word new is used to create an object of a class. Like for example, in our earlier, we have created a class called student, right? Class student. And if I want to create a object of the student, I'll say student, just give some name. Okay. Sam is equal to new student. And that's another student called Joe. Student Joe is equal to new student. Okay. Line number 62 and 64 represents two objects, two different students. Okay. See here, I am using something called new. So in Java, you will use new to create objects. So if you see here, Sam is a different object, Joe is a different object. Sam will have his own details. He will have his own name. He will have his own list of courses that he is going to attend. Likewise, Joe will have his own set of information. Okay. Sam has no clue what Joe has enrolled for, because these are two different objects. Objects cannot see each other's information, right? Just like, a real world example, another thing is a car. When I buy a car, my car will have its own mileage. It's not that all Toyota cars will have same mileage, right? Even though they share the same make model, even though they have the same make model, but the mileage will be different. So that means each object will have its own set of information. Even though they represent the same contract, they have different information. Okay. So in Java, you create objects using something called new. Okay. Another example is, let's say, a triangle. If you want to represent a triangle, I will say triangle T is equal to new triangle, or employee E is equal to new employee. Okay. Let's do one thing. So, okay, we have like 15 minutes left. I really want to, write some code and show you. Okay, but let me do one thing. Today I'll just go ahead and write the code and show you. Tomorrow what I'll do is I'll share these examples. Okay, you can create these examples and use this tool. But today, for now, let me show you a simple example. So I said we have an employee. Okay. So I have a class called employee. Class employee. And employee has couple of attributes or fields. I have a name, SSN, year, and all those things. I'll just, what I'll do is, for now, I will copy. I'll just, whatever I have copy paste here. Okay. And the other day, in order to run the program, the hello world, we did something like this, public static void main. So I'll copy paste that here. Okay. And let me try to create a couple of employees here. I'll say employee is equal to new employee. Okay. Let me say Sam dot name, or should I say Sam dot name equal to Samuel. I'll say employee Joe is equal to new Sam. And I'll put different details for Joe. So the Joe.name is equal to something like Joe2. Putting some name there. Now when I access Sam.name, I'll get the name of Sam. Okay, so when I run this program, I should get the name of Sam. Okay, I'll not get the name of Joe because Joe is a different object altogether. Likewise, when I say Joe.name, I'll get the name of Joe. Okay, so objects represent a copies of these classes. A copy which will have its own set of data which is not shared with other objects. Okay, is that clear what an object and what a class is? Today I want you to download that software. I want a feedback from you. Does everyone know the basics of Java, like what a class and what an object is, or am I spending too much time there? I know there are most of you folks who are from electronics background. That is the reason I'm spending so much time. But I really want to understand. Do you guys already are aware of these things, or what do you guys say? So let's assume this Excel sheet is Java. Azhar, you wanted to say anything?
Sorry?
No, you unmuted, so I just was wondering, do you want to talk?
No, I think it's better to learn from starting.
Okay, fine. Okay, so let's assume we'll try to represent how the class and object is represented in Java inside the JVM. Okay, so let's assume I have something called a class, and here I am representing objects. Okay, so let's say the name of the class is what else? What do we represent? Give me one example. What shall we represent in a class? Employee. We already talked about employee. Give me something else. Give me some other example of a class. Okay, I'll take something called bank account. Okay, so I'm saying bank account. Give me the features of a bank account. What will a bank account have? So bank account will have account number. Very good. Name, SSN, right? And balance and address. Some of the basic things. Okay. Now let's try to create objects of that particular bank account. Okay. So I'll say account number 1, 2, 3, 4, and his name is, let's say call Sirish. Okay, his SSN number is 1, 2, 3, 4. His balance is $100. His address is something like ABCD. Now another object. Let's create another object. His ID is 4567. His name is Sam. His SSN number is 456 something. His balance is, let's say, 250, and his address is something else. Okay, let's create one more just for the sake of example. His number is 6666. His name is Tom, and his SSN number is 4444. Fancy guy. He has got $300, and his address is something else. Right. So if you see, these are objects. These are independent objects. Independent, these are called rows, right? A class represents a contract, and an object is actually a
copy of that particular class with data. So an object represents data, and if you can see, this is a different row, right? This is a different row, this is a different row, this is a different row. So in Java memory, these things are represented separately, right? Even though they all represent the same class, even though they all share the same contract, these are different objects. So like I'm showing you different colors here in Java, right? The Java has to store information somewhere, so it stores like this in memory as different objects. It's not that they store always in this sequence or side by side, but you get the idea, right? They all are stored as independent information, independent objects which do not share anything in common. These are all independent copies of this particular class. Okay, any questions here? Okay, let's actually stop for today, because what I want to do is I want you guys to use this tool. This tool is known as I said, this is known as Eclipse. The name of this software is Eclipse. Okay, and it is known as something called IDE, and IDE stands for Integrated Development Environment. Okay, so we'll see many uses of this tool, and you can expect a interview question wherein I've seen interviewer asking what IDE you use. One of the famous IDE is Eclipse, the tool that I'm using currently. So like for example, this provides many features. Like for example, when I press dot, it will automatically give a tooltip here. Okay, instead of typing everything, I can use that. Okay, and if you have observed, I wrote this program and I did not compile. I did not say Java C. I just right clicked and say run, and the program, this tool, automatically in the background it creates a .class file. It compiles the code and creates a .class file, and it automatically runs this particular program. So it really helps a developer. It reduces your time. So I want you guys to start using this tool as much as possible. Okay, so please download that, and then we'll start using that tomorrow. So the question is, in real world, do we use Notepad or do we use IDE? Good question. So the answer is you will use IDE. That is the reason I want you to start using the IDE right from day one. Like for example, if you see, I have like 10 to 15 classes here. In a real world project, there will be like hundreds of classes. So compiling them, running them is a big pain if you are using the normal way of command prompt, Java C and Java, right? So you will see this how useful this IDE is, this tool called Eclipse. Okay, any other questions? One major thing is, if you see, the moment there is some error, I'll get an instant feedback. It will immediately tell you there is an error, you need to fix this error here. Unlike if you are using a traditional way of programming, you will have to write this program, save this file, and then run a Java C command. But with IDE, you save lot of time. Okay, so these are one of the, use IDE to save time, save developer time. Okay, let's stop for today. I'm really sorry, in the beginning we had that